Hi, David. Thank you for the warm welcome.
Roman, great to see you. Hope you're doing well, and great to have you virtually here with us today in Dublin. I don't think it's the first time you've been to Dublin, at least in real life, anyway, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. No, it's a lovely place, and maybe in the not too distant future we'll be able to travel to Dublin again without any restrictions and any concerns. But yeah, for now it's great to be with you virtually.
Thanks so much again for your time. So, folks, today we're kicking off with an interactive session, and for a long time, people have debated what the difference is between the product manager and the product owner role, if these roles can coexist or not, and which one should be used. So today, we're going to run an Ask Me Anything session with Roman on product owner versus product manager. And what we invite you to do is to ask your questions through the Q&A panel of the platform on this topic. It's a nice meaty topic, so it's a great one to get us going today. And we would also invite you to review the questions that people are asking and to upvote them. So that will help us understand which questions people are most interested in asking Roman. You can upvote just using the thumbs up icon in the platform. Okay. So just to kick us off, we took a couple of questions just through our social media platform yesterday, and we'll keep an eye just on the Q&A feature for new questions coming in. So Roman, we'll start with a nice easy one, and it's slightly controversial one maybe as well for some. So it's around SAFe and specifically the Scale Agile framework. So what's your take on how it interprets the product owner role versus the product manager role? That's a question that often comes up in our community.
Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting question. So I have to say, I must admit, I'm not a SAFe expert. So what I'm saying, the perspective I'm sharing is based on my understanding of SAFe. But sort of the way I understand the SAFe product owner role is that it's largely a tactical role. So if I'm a SAFe product owner, I work with one of my development teams. I take care of the product backlog or part of a product backlog, maybe a team backlog, and I'm more inward focused. So making sure that the development team has the right inputs, and so I'll be attending to my backlog, writing user stories, and working with the development team. And so a tactical inward focused role, which I believe is rather different from how the Scrum product owner role was intended, or how the Scrum product owner role is intended. And then as there is a tactical, more inward-focused product owner, there's a need to have somebody look after the strategic aspects of a product and make the strategic product decisions. So, for instance, what specific value the product should create and who the beneficiaries of the product are, the users and customers, what makes the product stand out, what the business goals are, the underlying business model, what specific outcomes or product goals the product should meet, say, over the next 9 to 12 months. And that will be, and that's my understanding, done by a SAFe product manager. And that SAFe product manager would also be more outward focused, more outward facing, I guess I should say. So take care of market developments, trends, do some competitive analysis, all those good things. So essentially, ownership has been split along, the strategic tactical divide, you could say. And that makes sense in order to scale. In order to facilitate, allow a group of people to work together on a bigger feature-rich product, assuming that the strategy is reasonably stable. Because one of the benefits, again, is it allows you to scale that split. The drawbacks is when the strategy changes, if the strategy is volatile, particularly if it changes frequently, if there's a lot of uncertainty, risk, innovation, then it can be tricky to ensure that the strategic decisions really guide the tactical ones, and that the tactical insights gained from the tactical work, the work of the SAFe product owners, adequately inform the strategic decisions made by the SAFe product manager. So it's an interesting take, but from my perspective, the unfortunate thing is that the product owner, the SAFe product owner role is called product owner and not tactical product manager, for instance.
Yeah.
Because I think, there has been a lot of there's been a significant amount of confusion about the product owner role as it's defined in Scrum, even before
Yeah.
the advent of SAFe. And with SAFe introducing a new product owner role that's different from the Scrum product owner, I think that's increased the confusion. And so, it just means that when people hear the term product owner, in some cases they've got widely different interpretations and yeah,
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point around, kind of what's in the name, because it does cause confusion,
Mm.
particularly in large enterprises when they see the Scrum guide as this product owner role, and then maybe it's practiced quite differently in SAFe. It's split as you mentioned. I think Mary Poppendick talks a little bit about proxies. I remember seeing a talk from her where she talks about proxies, and I guess that's a danger or a risk in terms of maybe splitting that you've got maybe an extra handover to from a product manager to what they call a product owner there. So
That's
I
right.
guess that might be another risk as well.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you touched on what's in a name, that question, and the product owner role is called product owner because the person playing that role, literally, at least in Scrum, is meant to own the product on behalf of the
Yeah.
company. So it's really intended to express a certain level of empowerment. I'd say a significant level of
Yeah.
empowerment. I own the product holistically. So a Scrum product owner has, unlike a SAFe product owner, what I would
Yeah.
call full stack ownership. Owns the strategic product decisions and the tactical decisions. And of course, the idea is not to have this mega super dictator product owner person. But obviously, an agile framework like Scrum highly
Yeah.
values collaboration. But
Yeah.
a product owner working together with one or two cross-functional development teams plus a set of
Mm.
stakeholders, and then you throw maybe selected users and customers in the mix in a sprint
Mm.
review meeting. You have a rather large and diverse group of people. And so the
Yeah.
idea is, if no decision can be made by agreement, if there's no form of consensus, then the product owner has the last word and is empowered enough to keep the product progressing, moving forward, and run the next sprint, try and experiment and see what happens. And
Absolutely.
again, that's quite different, I find, from the idea from how the product owner role is positioned in SAFe.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just maybe I think we have a follow-up question. So thank you for whoever asked this. How do you see the future of the product owner role evolving? And it kind of goes back to that. What's in the name? Would you see the title changing, for example? I think that seems to be specific to maybe the Scrum product owner role.
Yeah, another interesting question. When we go back in the history of Scrum, then we'll see that I think the first formulation of the Scrum framework didn't have the product owner role, but talked about product management and the product manager. So originally there was no product owner in Scrum, but a product manager. And then Ken Schwaber changed, who's been mainly responsible for coining and developing the Scrum terms. He changed the role from product manager to product owner. And one of the key reasons is, as I've already explained, the idea to express the level of empowerment product people need in an agile Scrum-based context.
Mm.
And so for me personally, it's less about the term that is being used. So, if somebody works as a product manager or product owner, for me, that's not what's important. For me, what's really important is to understand what product or what asset does the individual own. Is it a product? So is it something that creates value largely on its own for a group of people and for the business? And that might be by generating revenue directly. Think of a product like, say, Microsoft Office. It might be by supporting other products and services like an online retailer's website, or an IT type product that saves money and enhances productivity, right? But is it a product or is it something else? And then does the person have the right authority in order to make product decisions, and not only tactical ones but also strategic ones? And that's particularly important as long as the product is young, or as long as there's a lot of change and risk, I find.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, for me, how will the product owner role develop? It's kind of hard to say.
Mm.
I hope that the understanding of, excuse me, the intention of at least, how the Scrum product owner role is intended, that will improve over the coming years. But I mean, I tend to say to organizations I work with, either call your product people product owners or call them product managers, and then
Mm.
use qualifying terms like lead or junior and senior and so
Yeah.
forth. But avoid using both terms, because I've worked with organizations where the product owners were desperate to grow up and become empowered and be
Mm.
product managers and be allowed to take on strategic decision making responsibilities. And I've worked with organizations where the product managers were desperate to become these hip, trendy, agile product
Yeah.
owners. That can't be the point, right? I
Yeah.
mean, really, we want to be product people who create as much value as we possibly can for the users and
Yeah.
customers of our products and our business, right? I mean, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, that's what should matter.
Absolutely, and I only learned. I think it was originally called product manager in that very very early version of Scrum, which was interesting.
Mm.
And I suppose when you think about it, you can use Scrum in outside of software development as well, right? You can use it. I know Jeff Sutherland talks about Boeing using Scrum, for example, to build airlines, and I've heard stories of Girl Scouts using Scrum and things like that. So they're probably not going to have a product manager functionality maybe in those type of organizations, but the product owner role is still important, like you say, someone to have that decision making responsibility as well is also important there. um, okay, so I see just the next question coming in from Margaret. So any tips for avoiding getting pulled into solution focused, dev team focus, and putting emphasis on the outward focus? If in a product manager role, you may not be fully defined within the org.
Yeah, cool, great. Well, thank you for submitting that question. So I think as the person in charge of the product, it's always a balancing act. Spending enough time with the development team or the development teams to make sure that you support them adequately and you make the right tactical product decisions, and at the same time not neglecting your strategic work around discovery and around strategizing. So that means regularly reviewing how your product is doing and assessing, using the KPIs, assessing its performance. So you might be using a key performance indicator like, say, engagement, for instance, or churn, or monthly recurring revenue, depending on the type of product that you look after. That you don't overlook any trends in the marketplace, that you don't overlook any moves by your competitors, and so that you keep an eye out for opportunities and threats. And so it's the example I like to use is riding a bicycle, because I like to ride bikes. So when you ride a bicycle, you kind of have to balance two aspects as well. One is you've got to be in the here and now, and you've got to turn the cranks. If you don't turn the cranks, you're going to fall over, right? And you're not going to make any progress. At the same time, you've got to steer and you've got to change gears. If you don't change gears, your knees might start to hurt. And professional cyclists spend a lot of time improving their pedal stroke, being able to ride very efficiently and turn the pedals in a very very smooth way. But if all we do is pay attention to how we turn the cranks and steering and changing gears, and we don't look ahead sufficiently enough, we will crash. I know this from personal experience, both looking after products and riding bicycles. So, and a crash can hurt. In some cases, it hurts quite badly. So it's about, again, trying to do both. Looking ahead, being outward looking to the marketplace, looking for opportunities and threats, looking for growth opportunities. Doing the right amount of discovery and strategizing work, and at the same time attending enough to the tactical work, to the right here, right now, what the development team is doing, the product increments that the development team might be building. And it's okay, if, say, for one sprint or for a certain period of time, you focus more on supporting the development team, and then another sprint or maybe another 2-week cycle, or the next month, you focus a little bit more on, say, connecting with selected users and customers and observing them or interviewing them or doing some other form of discovery, strategizing type activities. But again, over time, try and balance it out. If you really, really struggle with this, then it might be an indication that you have too much work. And maybe you're playing another role. There's another job that you have to do. Maybe you can sort of pass it on to someone else, delegate that work. Or maybe just the product has grown too big and you need other product people to support you and work with you on the product.
That's great, and thanks for the question, Margaret. Okay, so next one is around PO reporting line. What would you recommend for that reporting line?
Yeah, another great question, and it's an interesting one because, based on sort of my experience working for companies and my experience working with companies and consulting them, I generally tend to say, well, you want to introduce a product management group and have a head of product, and that head of product should be, ideally on the leadership team. Again, it'll depend on the size of the organization and the org chart, the structure, and so that you have a dedicated function, a dedicated product management function, just like you typically have a development or engineering function. You've got a sales function, you've got a marketing function, you may typically have a human resources function. So you want a product management group, a product management function. And I think often that is something that is worthwhile considering. But then one of my clients is a large retailer here in the UK, and the way that they've set up their product management, their product management is in a more distributed fashion, where they don't have a central head of product, but their product people are essentially distributed across the different business units and business groups, which allows them to be much closer to their business counterparts, their business partners, the business stakeholders. And so there are benefits and drawbacks in both approaches. But typically, I would expect that a product owner reports to someone like a head of product who runs a group, a team of product management people. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Roman, for that one. Okay, so just the next one, and this is a very common question I think I've seen before. So in most job ads, product owner is a more fancy title for project manager. Is this a misunderstanding on behalf of organizations? What are the key responsibilities of a product owner?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. So, yeah, I've certainly seen ads and where the product owner role seemed to be more like a team lead or project manager, or sort of a cross between a business analyst and a project manager. And to be fair, there's some small project management elements in the work that product owners have to do. So, for instance, I think that generally speaking, it makes a lot of sense for product people and product owners to use a product roadmap to describe the journey you want to take your product on. And so then identifying outcomes or goals that your product should achieve and balancing them with dates and the people that are available in order to do the work, you could argue is not too dissimilar to some of the work that a project manager does. But generally, the big difference is that a project manager is rewarded to take some form of specification that describes the work that needs to be done and gets it done with one or more teams. And success means the specification is implemented as expected, on time and on budget. But for a product owner and generally a product person, our job is to create as much value as possible, or to maximize the value that a product creates, as the Scrum framework suggests. So it's about understanding who the product serves, who the users and customers are, what a need or needs the product should address, what the business goals are, and then trying to do everything we can in order to meet those needs and those business goals. And that typically takes time. A product usually doesn't become successful overnight, but it may take months for a product to achieve product market fit. And once a product has achieved product market fit and is in the growth stage, that's at least my definition or my take on product market fit, then typically for a revenue generating product, the product has become profitable, and so the product is actually making money for the organization. So this goes to show that a product owner should look after a product for an extended period of time. In many cases, I'd say ideally across its entire life cycle, So, that might be years spending years looking after a specific product, and again, managing that product, and to a certain extent experimenting with that product, trying out what works for the users and what doesn't work for the users, and trying to maximize the value that the product creates. So yeah, there's a lot of misunderstanding, but I think it's not only about project manager versus product owner, it's also about project management versus product management. And one of the reasons for that is that product management is a comparatively young profession. So depending on, different people have different perspectives on this. Some people say, oh, product management started to emerge in the 1930s. Personally, I fall more into the camp of people who say maybe in the 1950s, product management really started to crawl out of marketing and engineering. And then you look at digital products. I think Microsoft was one of the first companies to use product managers in the 1980s. And so, in the digital space, really, product management hasn't been around for a very long time. The profession also has been changing significantly in the last 10, 15 years, through the influence of approaches like Agile. And so, yeah, there's, the understanding generally what product management is and what a product person should do.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? Certainly much lower than when you say, oh, what is sales and what does a sales rep do? I mean, people usually like, oh, I can roughly tell you what that person should be doing.
Yeah. I think you called it the product roadmap tool there. Like one thing I've found super useful recently is I know you talk a lot about goal oriented product roadmaps, and you have a canvas around that, but really it's focusing on those outcomes, right? And that's quite different from maybe a kind of more traditional, maybe Gantt chart style roadmap, where maybe success is measured on time, on budget. So like it seems that even if you look at a roadmap, that's maybe an artifact of maybe some differences there between the more traditional project management role and a product owner, product manager role with something like roadmaps and strategy, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. So traditionally, a project manager wouldn't really spend much time on, with product discovery and product strategy activities, defining KPIs, key performance indicators for a product, because, I run a project, that project might last 6 months, it might last 12 months, then I'm done, I move on to the next project. But again, I think for professional product people, no matter if they're referred to as product managers or product owners, we should look after our products much longer, for the reason that I said. It usually takes a while for a product to become a success. And so, it's worthwhile to stick with the product and learn from what works, as I said earlier, and what doesn't work, and then be able to enjoy that success and possibly even, take advantage of a little bonus. Who knows?
Absolutely. Just another question from Margaret. So, how should a strategic product manager interact with a dev team typically? What should a healthy relationship look like?
Yeah, nice question. I think how product people interact with development teams will depend on the process, the development process that is being used. So a Scrum suggests several different interactions really, and it's largely the Scrum ceremonies, the sprint events. So things like sprint planning meeting, things like sprint review meeting and sprint retrospective, where a Scrum product owner in a development team would interact with each other. And then there's another important area, and that is product backlog work, product backlog refinement, working together on the product backlog to discover new product backlog items, but also to progressively break down larger items, say epics, into smaller ones, detailed user stories. And then I also think that it's super valuable for development team members to be able to carry out some of the discovery strategizing work and participate in that. And for instance, do help with user research and carry out some direct observation, or have at least a rough understanding what's happening in the marketplace and acquire some domain knowledge that way. Because that ultimately helps the development team to be less dependent on the product owner and be more autonomous. Requires a little bit less input then from the product owner. It's a little bit less, frees up the product owner to a certain extent. And I believe it helps the development team design and build better digital solutions, really. I really do think that a good understanding of the users and their needs facilitates that, or is in a way the prerequisite for building and designing products that really do a good job for the users. So my advice would be really look at what kind of product owner you are, and look at the process model that is being applied, the specific development process that is being used, the framework that is being used, and that should hopefully help you with answering that question and deciding how do you best interact with the development team. And then, don't forget, often it's best just to go and talk to people and ask people, So,
Right.
if you currently work with a development team, with one or more development teams, and you're not quite sure if, people are getting the support they need from you and the guidance they need from you and the leadership they need from you in terms of, the product and product decisions, then, go and ask them. A great way to do this is to sit together in the next retrospective and, reflect on it and see what people have to say, and, to see what people would need from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really reminds me of what you called out earlier around, collaboration. So, helping the team collaborate with users as well, and get, not be that kind of proxy, that it's a collaboration with those users as well. So, so Roman, we have time for just one more question. So how is the product owner role different to a traditional business analyst role? Okay, so we talked about product manager versus product owner. How does where does BA fall into this in your mind?
Yeah, it's another great question. So I've experienced the business analyst implemented in very different ways in different organizations. So I've worked with business analysts who essentially acted as product managers, say in a larger bank or larger insurance business where no product management did exist. And I've seen business analysts who would be more like system architects, very much focused on, I don't know, ultimately describing or creating pretty technical requirements. I think for me, the real difference is the ownership that a product owner, at least in a Scrum context, a Scrum product owner requires. A product owner really owns that product, and it means not only being empowered, authorized to make the relevant strategic and tactical decisions, but it really wants to foster, that's at least my understanding, an entrepreneurial spirit. This is your product. You're the product owner, and you work within a Scrum team, with a Scrum master and one or more development teams. This is your asset. This is your product. Take that asset, run with it, and with it, try and create as much value as you possibly can. And of course, you want to run tests. Of course, you want to validate your ideas. Of course, you want to take advantage of the feedback from stakeholders and at least selected users and customers. But it's really this idea of taking responsibility, taking ownership, but at the same time putting people in a context and offering people the context so that's possible. Whereas the business analysts, even the business analysts who I've seen work as a little bit similar to product managers, product owners, that wasn't necessarily the case. So I guess what I'm referring to is the fact that to be able to be an effective product owner, you need the right organizational context. So certainly that's super beneficial, in addition to having the right attitude and having the right skills. So ultimately, I think we'll have to really, I'd have to say we have to look at the specific business analyst role description or job description, and then compare it to the responsibilities, the typical responsibilities of a product owner in Scrum, in order to decide, how similar are those roles then, or how distinct are they. Often I found that business analysts can make good product owners, but again, that often requires acquiring additional skills. So sometimes these are skills around product strategy and product discovery, product lifecycle management. Sometimes these are sort of soft skills, people skills, leadership skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is often contextual, isn't it? I think it's a good tip in terms of maybe listing those responsibilities between, what's a BA look like in your organization, and then maybe look at the product owner role as well, and maybe to compare those. So folks, we are just out of time, and sorry, I see a couple more questions. Roman, just if people want to follow up, where can they, how can they contact you? Where can they learn more about your work? Is there anywhere you'd suggest?
Yeah, sure. So, if you'd like to learn more about my work or find out more about my thoughts on the product owner role, then please go to my website, romanpichler.com. So you can find a range, quite a few articles, blog posts on the product owner role and other roles. And we've talked a little bit about product strategy. We've talked a little bit about product backlog refinement. So you find quite a bit of resources on there. Just check it out. And if you've got any follow-up questions, then just reach out to me. Don't be shy, and just drop me an email or fill out the contact form on my website.
Brilliant. Listen, Roman, thanks so much again for your time today. Hopefully we get to see you in person in Dublin in the near future, all being well and good. And yeah, hope you enjoy the rest of the event. And so folks, we're just going to move into our breakout tracks next. They're going to start in 5 minutes. So grab a coffee and we'll kick off there. Thanks again, Roman.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Bye-bye.